Rambam, the laws of Shabbos. We're in the third chapter. Okay.
How does it start?
It is permissible. It's chapter 3. It is permissible to begin the performance of a forbidden labor on Friday, before Shabbos, in other words, even though the labor is completed on its own accord on Shabbos itself. The prohibition against work applies only on Shabbos itself. Moreover, when a task is carried out on its own accord on Shabbos, we are permitted to derive benefit from what was completed on Shabbos. So what is implied? He gives an example. We may open an irrigation channel to a garden on Friday, causing it to continue to fill throughout the Shabbos day. Right? Why can you do that? It's irrigating. You're not allowed to irrigate on Shabbos because it's doing it on its own. You opened it up before Shabbos. Now it's doing it on its own. So that's okay. Not a problem. Is that clear?
I can't find where we're at. I'm here you see chapter 3, but I don't know. When I open my windows, it's 1 to 3.
Huh? Take the booklet. Here, there's another booklet. Got it?
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Sure. Very.
Sorry. Okay, so what is it? So irrigation, we got that, right? We may place burning incense under garments, causing them to continue to be made fragrant throughout the entire Shabbos. We may apply a salve to the eye or a bandage to a wound, causing them to continue to heal throughout Shabbos, right? Because it's happening all on its own. You did the act. That act to do on Shabbos would be forbidden, any of these, right? But you did it before Shabbos, and now on its own it continued. We may mix ink with herbs before night and let the mixture soak throughout the entire Shabbos. We may place wool into a vat or strands of flax into an oven so that their color continues to change throughout the entire Shabbos. In other words, you are dyeing something, right? We may lay out snares for wild beasts, birds, and fish at nightfall, meaning before Shabbos, so that they continue being captured throughout the entire Shabbos. We may load the beams of an olive press or the round stones of a grape press at nightfall so that the liquids will continue to flow throughout the entire Shabbos. Similarly, we may light a candle or a fire before evening so that it continues to burn throughout the entire Shabbos, right? Which we light Shabbos candles, right? That's where we have that example, correct?
Yeah.
A pot may be placed over a fire, or meat may be placed in an oven or over coals on Friday so that they may continue to cook throughout the Shabbos, with the intent that they may be eaten on Shabbos. Children is the example, exactly. But we're going to see that this is not so simple. Not so simple. With regard to this matter, however, there are certain restrictions that were enacted lest one stirs the coals on Shabbos. That's Shema Yachte Gecholim is what it's called. Shema Yachte is the term in Hebrew that you might stir. In other words, irrigation we're not worried about. We're not worried about you light a candle and that you're going to do something. But we're worried that if you're going to cook something, that you may come to stir the coals. Why would you stir the coals? In order to create more heat. And that's called cooking on Shabbos. So therefore, there's restrictions in what you can do as far as cooking before Shabbos. Now, we're not going to get there. I don't know if we're going to get there today, but just to give you the context is that today what we do is we put a blech. Yeah. A blech is a covering that serves as a sign for us that we shouldn't come to stir or change or play with the dial, right? If you don't put that, then all these laws that we're going to talk about would apply.
Are you talking about a physical thing that you put on?
Physical, yeah.
I saw that.
You'll see a silver foil over on the cholent. There's a silver foil. That silver foil is serving as a reminder, right? Don't play with the dials, right? Back in the day, it was don't play with the fire, right? Okay, you might, because you're going to look at what he's going to explain over here, because you're going to look at the food and you're going to say, oh, it needs a little more heat, and therefore I'm going to heat up I'm going to stir the coals to create more heat so it'll cook better, right? That's all rabbinic law, right? Rabbinic law to prevent you. What's rabbinic law? Is like a fence around the garden to prevent from someone trespassing on the garden to ruin the beautiful, the beautiful flower bed. So that's rabbinic law here, that we shouldn't come and maybe do this. So therefore, you're not allowed to. And now we're going to give the parameters, which much of this law is not applicable today, because we don't have these kind of ovens and we don't have these kind of setups. And furthermore, there's a solution to it, right? So we're not going to the solution now. We're just going into the parameter of the law of when you wouldn't eat the blech, right? When you could use it as is. Okay, is that clear? Good. Okay, so a pot may be placed over a fire, or meat may be placed in an oven, or over coals on Friday, so that they continue to cook throughout Shabbos, with the intent that they be eaten on Shabbos. With regard to this matter, however, there are certain restrictions that were enacted. This one will stir the coals on Shabbos. Okay, so what is applied? What is implied? When the food has not been cooked to the extent that it is ready to serve, water has not been boiled, or food that has been cooked to the extent that it is ready to serve, but the longer it cooks, the better its taste, a stew, right? Those are the examples. It may not be left on a fire on Shabbos, even though if it was placed before Shabbos and the commandments of the Shabbos, right? You did this all before Shabbos. So you're not cooking on Shabbos. Why can't you do it? But unless one stir the coals, the cooking process to cause it to cook more thoroughly, right? In other words, because it wasn't cooked thoroughly, the meat, I just put the meat up before Shabbos. I might stir it because I wanted to cook more, it needs more heat. So I might stir. Or maybe it was fully cooked, the meat, but it's a stew. And the longer it sits, the better it's going to be. So in those instances, I can't put the food before Shabbos on the fire, again, without a blech. We're not talking with that covering, right? We're talking about, we can't do that. Accordingly, it's permissible to leave food cooking, and if one removed the coals, one covered the coals in the range with ash or with a thin chips from the combing of flax. So now there's the way you could remove the coals or cover it with ash, the coals, right? So it's really nothing much left of there, right? Or thin chips. Now, this is a certain oven we're talking about over here. You see, we're speaking about an oven over here. It's called a, no. It's called a tanur. Okay? Let's just use the word tanur because it's a certain type of, actually, I think he's going to say now. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. He's going to explain now. No, it's not a tanur. Okay. And we didn't get into that. We'll get into. There's 3 different types of ovens that they had back in the day, and they worked differently. The heat was different, and and therefore different law. Okay, all based on. Well, that's for sure biblical, but it's based on what's the issue here? Actually, it's a rabbinic law. No, it's not biblical. Stirring the coals. Say that word. Say the word.
Stirring the coals?
Say the word. Stirring the coals. Okay. That's the principle, or it's a very important principle in Jewish law. Okay. Right? Coming, right? In other words, you may do that because you may do that. So therefore comes a rabbinic law and says, well, you can't do such and such. Okay. So when is it permitted? We just gave some, right? Or the coals burned low, where then they were covered with ash, or the fuel used was straw, stubble, or feces of the small animals, for then no coals will remain, right? Because stubble, you're not going to get any coals; it's going to burn out. So we're not worried you're gonna stir the coals, right? In these instances, it's obvious that the person has diverted his attention from this food, hence a decree was not enacted forbidding a decree. Who enacted a decree? God? Rabbinic. Thank you. Okay. Enacted forbidding the food that was left on fire, lest he stir the coals. Okay. Now, when does the above apply? Everything we just said all applies, right? We gave parameters with regard to a range. Here's a picture of a range. You see it? You have a picture there?
No.
Huh? It's called Akira. No, this is called Akira. Huh? A range has two openings for pots, right? We're talking about Akira. It's not doesn't get that hot because of the two openings. Let's just see here. The Kira, stovetop, if you will, whatever you want to arrange. Whatever. English words are, don't mean much. Let's call it Kira, okay? Whose heat is minimal. That's the point over here. Okay, that's the important point. Okay. With regard to an oven, which is called a tanur, okay? Tanur, okay? Right, with an oven, in contrast, even if one removed the coals, covered them with ash, or used straw or stubble as fuel, not allowed to leave the food on it or in it. Somebody wants you not put food close to it. Right? Why? Because there's a lot more heat that's produced in a tanur than a kira. Okay, just that's the way it is.
What's the profile?
We didn't get there yet. Are you number 5? Okay. I don't think we had that.
Okay.
We're going to have that next, coming up.
Okay.
This applies to food that was not cooked to completion, or was completely cooked, but will benefit continued cooking. Since an oven, a tanur, we're talking about, is very hot, a person will not divert his attention from the fire. Right? This is a very hot oven. Right? It's very hot, and therefore you're concerned about your food. Right? People want to have Shabbos, you want to have good tasting food, so you're going to be concerned. So this is the issue here. Since some is very right hands, we suspect that he will stir the small fire that remains, even if it's straw or stubble, or even if it is covered.
You can say he can remove the concrete coals. That's permissible.
What? No.
If you think it's too hot, you can take out some of the coals. That's not the same thing.
We said that for the kira, but not for the tanur. We didn't say that, right? Because whenever you take out, there's always something left, right? There will always be something left. So we're still always concerned, right? Why did the sages forbid leaving food in the oven even if the fire was removed? Right? Because a person can remove only a majority of the coals and their most intense heat. It is impossible to remove the entire fire so that not even a spark remains. Since an oven's heat is very warm, we suspect that he will stir the fire so that the sparks will remain and the oven will burn more. Right? By the way, is this a suspect of every person? No. But we're worried. The sages worried because this is, remember that the liability over here is if you did it willfully with witnesses, there's a death sentence. Without witnesses, early death. It's a serious issue over here. So therefore, the sages were very careful. All right. Now we're getting to a kopach. A kopach is in between the kira and the tanur. Which one's hotter? Which one's the hottest? Tanur is the hottest. Which one is the least heat? Kira. Kopach is in between. Okay. So the tanur was made like on a slant that so it was very direct heat. The heat came right. It was a very direct. I don't know with one opening only for one pot, so it was very concentrated. The kira was made two openings. It was wide, so therefore the heat wasn't as strong to the point of cooking. The kopach also has one opening, if I recall correctly, has one opening, but it's not slanted, the oven. So therefore it doesn't, the heat isn't concentrated. Okay. By the way, if you're buying a new oven range, go ask for the kopach because you get a good deal. You get a good deal on the kopach today. Just joking.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, it comes with free feces and stubble.
Shipping money.
Don't ask him for that. He might oblige. L'chaim. Oh my gosh. Okay, a kobach is warmer. It's warmer than a range than the kira, but not as warm as the oven, which is the tanur. Therefore, if wood or gefet is used as fuel, it is considered equivalent to the oven. It is equivalent to the oven, meaning to the tanur, right? Which is the because that's going to heat up, very strongly, and we're not permitted to leave food within it, upon it, or next to it. And it is if it was not completely cooked, or even if it was completely cooked, but will benefit from the continued cooking. This applies even if the fire was removed or covered with ash, because we said you can't really remove it completely, right? If straw or stubble is used as fuel, it is bound by the same rules as the range. That was fuel, the kira meaning, range is a kira, right? That was fueled with straw or stubble, and food may be left cooking on it. What is a range? So what is a range and what is a kopach? A range is a place with an opening for two pots, a kopach, a range meaning a kira, right? A kopach is a place with opening for a single pot. A tanur is also single pot, but again, remember it was slanted, so it became much more intensified, the heat. Okay?
Yeah.
8. When food has not been cooked at all, or has been cooked to completion, but will be impaired by further cooking, it is permitted to leave it cooking, whether on a range, kopach, or an oven, all three. Right? Because why are we not worried? Because you're not going to stir the coal. You don't want it to be more heat because it's going to ruin it. Right? It's going to ruin it. It's impairing it. So we're not worried. Similarly, even when food has been cooked, but has not been cooked to completion, or when it has been cooked to completion but will benefit from further cooking, but will benefit, has been cooked, but not cooked to completion, but will benefit from it. It may be left on the fire if one placed an uncooked piece of meat in it shortly before nightfall, before Shabbos, in other words, where the whole dish is considered as entirely uncooked. This applies even although one has not removed or covered the coals, or he has divided his attention from the food and will not stir the coals. Interesting. Even though it will benefit, right? But you put in a piece of meat that won't benefit. So therefore, that makes it permissible.
In other words, it's cooked and then you put a raw piece in.
Right. So it's not going to benefit. So therefore, it makes it permissible. That's the point.
Not allowed to add the piece of meat during Shabbos, it's before Shabbos.
Yeah, everything's before Shabbos. The question is, can you do any of this before Shabbos and leave it over Shabbos? That's the question, right?
So there's
For timing.
Now, what happens if you didn't follow rules, right? Number 9, following rules apply whenever a person left food on fire in a situation where it was prohibited against doing so, prohibited by rabbinic law, right? If he transgressed and left the food cooking intentionally, right? He did it intentionally. He's prohibited to eat it until Saturday night. He must wait enough time passes for it to be cooked. So if it took an hour for it to be cooked after Shabbos, you have to wait an hour and then you could eat this. If you forgot to remove it from the fire on Friday, reading leniency is allowed, right? If the food was not completely cooked before the commencement of the Shabbos, it is forbidden to eat it until Saturday night. If it was completely cooked, a further cooking will benefit. It's permitted to eat immediately on Shabbos.
So cholent has to be cooked for Shabbos.
Well, we're not talking about cholent here.
Okay, meats have to be cooked.
We're not
for-
talking about. No, we're talking about what we're talking about. Don't put it into the. I already gave you the modern day context.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not talking about. We're talking about law here.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking about we already go beyond this. We're not dealing this. You don't need. In a certain way, you don't even need to know what we're talking about over here in order to make cholent. You just need to know you have to put a blech. Finished. Okay. That's all. But then you're not learning, then that's just knowing what to do, but that's not understanding the law. We're understanding the law over here. We're understanding the parameter of the law. That's the point over here. Okay? What's the issue?
The issue is, does it have to be cooked before Shabbos? And then
No, because that's with a blech. It's a different law. That's with a blech. So it's a different law. That's the point I'm making. It's a different law as a result, right? Because you have there as you have what did the rabbis worry? That you might stir the coals. But now if you purposefully, mindfully put something there to serve as a reminder, so that means you are not going to, it's very unlikely you're going to do it now.
Right.
Because you purposely, mindfully did something that should be a reminder that I shouldn't play with it.
Yeah.
That's a way that the same rabbis who made that law that you can't do this is they said this way you could do it. So that's a very simple thing. But hey, the point over here, learning Rambam is not about the practical halacha. It's about understanding the dimension of Jewish law, the parameters of Jewish law. Okay. Yes.
I heard this talking about something about waiting Motzei Shabbat for a certain time, for example, an hour
Right.
or two. What is it about?
But if you purposefully, if you willfully, did this, and it was, and it was cooking on Shabbos,
Okay.
so you have to wait until after Shabbos. That's
So
what.
if you added something that is not permissible to cook.
No. If you went against this law of that, you might stir the coals,
Oh yeah. No.
right? Which is a rabbinic law, right? So the rabbi said you can't eat this on Shabbos.
Even by accident, you're shocked.
No, if you did it by accident, it's a different story. If you left it by accident, if you forgot to remove it before Shabbos, right? And by accident you left it on the fire. So then there's a leniency that you could eat it if it was already cooked, right? It was already cooked before Shabbos, right? But it would be better cooked if you left it on Shabbos, right? You could. But if you did it purposefully and you didn't care, the law is, well, you can't eat this until after Shabbos.
What's the Shabbat for?
Whatever time it would take to make that dish. Okay. All right, folks, I would love to stay, but I can't. We're going to end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.